Hello and welcome to another Q&A live with me, Shakina. It's lovely to have all of you there. Today's session is going to be quite simple. It is for the next 60 minutes, I'm here to answer all of your OET questions. If you have a question that you would like answered, just post it in the chat the from the uh, platform you're joining from. So if that's YouTube, then on YouTube, and then if you're joining us on Facebook, then through Facebook. Um, so I can see quite a few of you saying hi in the chat. Lovely. Um, I'm going to just put in that little banner to encourage you to ask some questions. Um, and it really doesn't matter where you are in your OET journey. So it could be, you're just starting out, and you've, no idea about what OET is even, how to start preparing. Or it could be that, you've spent some months on preparation and you have your test coming up this month. So it doesn't really matter where you are. Any question you have, just pop it in the chat. So I can see some questions coming in through now, which is great. I am going to just pull that down. Um, so I've got a question here from um, Elf, who joins us on YouTube, and Elf's asking, is it possible to sit for OET subtest separately? Does the GMC accept it? So, Elf, things like whether a single subtest is accepted, what scores are accepted, that's not controlled by OET. That is decided by the regulator who accepts your scores. So the GMC is the regulator. You can visit their website and have a look there at what the requirements are. So I'm going to post in the chat a link to our page, which is going to tell you the different regulators, healthcare bodies, and authorities that accept OET. And there is very helpful, uh, on that page, you'll find links to the regulators' websites so that you can directly check, where I suggested you can directly check from. And sort of the same question there from Mohammed, who joins us on YouTube. What does clubbing mean, and can you explain it? So, clubbing is a term that's often used by OET candidates to describe the ability that some regulators give you to combine scores from two different OET sittings and present them to the regulator for acceptance. So some regulators allow you to do that, to take scores from two different sittings and use those scores. Now, like I said just before with the question, it is something that's decided by the regulator, not by OET. So I would encourage you, Mohammed, also to visit that link and have a look at the website of the regulator that you want to apply to. All right. I've got a question here from Himbi. Himbi on YouTube asks, or wants an explanation for why people fail in reading, and most of uh, Himbi's friends have got less marks in reading. So could you give some suggestions of how to pass in reading? So with a skill like reading, there are, and then of course with OET, there are three different parts to the reading test. Now, you have to sort of understand that each of those parts are linked to something that you will actually read in the workplace. So in part A, it is the kinds of things that you are reading every day and referring to treat patients. So, for example, dosage charts, treatment pathways, information about medication, that kind of stuff is what you read in part A. And the skills that you're using there are just to quickly look at the text that you have, your reference text, and look for the information that you want. So if you're looking for a dosage for a particular amount or weight, you look at only that information. So you're scanning for that specific information. It's something that you do every day, perhaps in your workplace. And then with reading part B, it's something that these are texts that are basically workplace communication. So emails, memos, policies, things that, that again, more likely that you're doing that kind of reading almost on an everyday basis at your workplace. Now, reading part C is perhaps something that you might not do every day, and that's where most people sort of struggle with reading, and could be um, why you're facing or your friends are facing some difficulties. Now, the thing with Part C is that it's the kind of reading that you do to further your professional knowledge. So, articles and research and updates on developments in the medical field. And like I said, it's something that you might not do every single day. So if you would like to succeed in reading, it's important that as you prepare for the test, you get used to reading all the three different kinds of texts that I've just mentioned. um, you read more of those in English and get familiar with the skills that you need for reading each part, and then and especially with reading part C, that you have a look at those kinds of texts and get used to reading them more often. It's also important to build up stamina. So reading for a full 1 hour, um, you know, um, you do part A, it takes 15 minutes, and then you move on to parts B and C, 45 minutes. So that's a lot of concentration you need to have. And if you're not used to reading for long periods, like 1 hour, then again, that can be, that can be a little bit of a problem. So those are some tips there. And what I'm going to recommend to you is our reading week. That So it's a series of videos that we for our reading week, that was part of some of the work that we did last year. I'm just going to look for the link in the chat. Yep. So if you look at the reading week, you've got some very part A specific, part B specific, and part C specific suggestions. But in the videos at the beginning, at the end, you've got some excellent suggestions for how you can really improve the reading um, that I just talked about. So have a look at that. Okay, I've got a question from Hadil. From where do I begin preparing for OET? So Hadil, it's a good question. And if it's something that, if OET is completely new to you, you would definitely be, wondering where to start from. I think any of us would have that question. Where do I start? What do I do? How do I begin? So we've got a really helpful resource online on our Ready page. So I'm going to just pop that into the chat. It's called our study guide. So it's a downloadable resource that you can use. I'm just putting the link into the chat. Um, so our study guide is a downloadable resource that you can use that takes you through each part of the test. So as you know, there are four Subtests: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And for reading and for reading and listening, you have three parts within those subtests. Um, for speaking, you have your role play, two role plays, and then your writing is a letter. So what the study guide does is that it breaks up each of those parts, and gives you a very systematic way that you can approach each part. It gives you lots of helpful tips and really is the best. It's sort of a one spot. It's one spot where you can get all the the most important information that you need about each part. So I'm going to encourage you to download the study guide. The study guide is on our Ready page, and in fact, what I might do is just share our um, just share the page with you so you can have a look. Um, just got it. So hopefully you can see that on my screen right now. Um, so you've got your Ready page, and as you can see, um, there's suggestions for you depending on where you are in your journey. So like you, I'm just beginning to my OET test preparation. If you click this, it will take you to resources that you can that would be most helpful for you. um, and here, just below that, is the study guide that I mentioned. And as you can see, you can request it for free. It's You can download it, and it's something that you can save on your device and keep with you, or you could take a printout and keep with you. And then, of course, at the bottom of the Ready page, um, you have just after the guide is links to our sample tests, and then our intro courses. They're also great for you to get to know a little bit more about each part of the test. And then, of course, you can check your language with Pulse. So there's lots on this page. If I scroll down further, there's more resources. But as I mentioned, the study guide is a good place to start. Or just clicking this button here, that will take you to the resources to help you begin. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing that. To keep moving on. And in fact, I can see Nian's question there on YouTube. How to get ready for beginners. I can't find any sources to start to learn. And so what I'm going to do is just post in that Ready page that I showed you into the chat. You can click that link, and it'll take you to all the great resources that I've just shared. I've got a question here from Panadol on Facebook, and they're asking, how long do I prepare for? So this is really a question that doesn't have a direct answer. Not, you know, I won't be saying 1 month. I won't be saying 2 weeks, or an exact sort of figure like that. But what I can say is that how long you prepare for is really up to you. It really depends on your circumstances and your sort of where you are in your level of English. So the two things, I'll just break those down a little bit more. So what I mean by your level of English is, you're obviously, when you have decided where you want to go and work, your destination country, you've got a score that you're aiming for. If your level of English is very close to the score that you're aiming for, then obviously you would need less preparation, less time to get there. If it's further from the score that you're aiming for, then you would need more time. I'm going to post in the chat a link to our pulse test. Now, our pulse test is not the OET test. It's a very short test that you can take that will tell you your level of English. So you're not sure, how far you are from that score that you're aiming for. Take a pulse test. It's 30 minutes. You can do it anywhere, and it will tell you where you are and how far you are from that score. So that's coming into the chat right now. And then the second thing that you need to think about is really how much time you have to dedicate to your study. If you've got lots of time, you're not working right now, you can dedicate all of the time that you have to study. That's great. It's going to obviously take you less time. Um, but if you've got, if you've got a full-time job, you've got family commitments, you've got other things that you're responsible for, then there's less time you can dedicate during the week for your preparation. So, thinking about those two things together will help you decide how long it will take for you to prepare. So, obviously, if you're very close to your level that you're aiming for, and you've got less time, um, you don't have a lot of time, you're very busy, it could still take you a bit of, it could take you some time to prepare, even though you're really close to that level. But if you've got lots of time in your hands and you're close to the level, you could be ready sooner. So it really depends, and think about those two factors as you're deciding when to book your test. Okay, I've got a question here from Militia. Militia joins us on YouTube, and Militia is asking, in reading part A, if the answer is Parkinson's disease, if disease is there in the question, do we need to write disease in the answer? The same applies for kilogram and percentage. So, our advice, of course, is when you're thinking about reading part A, your answers need to be short and precise. They should be taken directly from the text, and they should fit in short answer questions. Of course, in your gap fill, they fit into the gap, but short answer questions, you need to be accurate. You don't want to be adding extra words. And yes, if there is a word in the question, you don't need to repeat it in your answer, or a synonym of the word in the question. So, from your example, now I haven't seen the text or the question, so I'm just going by your example. If you've got disease in the question there, then your answer would just be Parkinson's. And the same for kilogram. With percentage, it works a little bit differently, because the symbol that you've written there doesn't mean percentage, it means percent. So, what percentage of ointment, 30%, that is your answer. So that's not the same word. And then, for your answer to be accurate and make sense, you do need to add the symbol there. We've got a really good video that explains this particular aspect of reading part A quite well, and with a lot more examples than I've given. So, I would encourage you to watch that video, and really look at what, why is it like that, and what are some more examples, as I said. I've got a question here, or from Gouda, who joins us on YouTube, saying, some people say that the first OET test date is easier and the second is tougher. Is that true? So that is absolutely not true. There's a lot of rumors on social media and this one is something that we have heard of, that is widely sort of uh, talked about. It's a very widespread rumor, um, but there is no truth to it. So whether you take the test for that is just nursing and medicine, or whether you take the test on the date that includes all professions, that's it doesn't matter which test date you go for. In fact, it doesn't matter whether you do your test in June, July, if you did your test last year, if you did your test this year. Um, OET is a standardized test, which means that we've had to prove to regulators who accept us and accept our scores that our test is fair to anyone who writes the test at any time. And so it it is a standardized test, and you can be sure that whenever you write the test, you it's going to give you the opportunity to demonstrate your English ability absolutely fairly. So that's absolutely not true. It's a rumor. Okay, I've got a question here from Facebook. Chinu, is spelling more important in listening part A? So, Chinu, of course, I think you're comparing it to reading part A, where spelling is um, absolutely important. You need to be 100% accurate. Um, but this, having said that, I would say that it is equally important in listening part A. And the reason for that is because, listening part A, the reason, the sort of workplace context that listening part A is centered around is, um, a consultation and patient, healthcare professionals' notes on a patient. And if you think about it, errors in spelling could lead to misunderstandings um, in that in for other people who read those notes that you've made. So it is important. There is a little bit of flexibility, especially um, for words that might not be commonly known to lay people, and um, that might not be commonly known, but generally, you we encourage you to spell as accurately as possible. We want you to make sure that you are practicing your spelling, and if you have areas of weakness in spelling, then definitely go and review those areas, and make sure that you know um, you're on top of that. So yes, there is some flexibility, but especially for words that are commonly known to healthcare professionals and medical professionals, words like protein, cholesterol, diabetes, all of these words are really commonly known to everyone, and so therefore they you would be expected to spell those accurately. Okay. Just looking for some newer questions as we go on. Um, so thank you for everyone posting the questions. I've got um, I've got a question here from Shiromi on YouTube. Shiromi is asking, how can we do scanning and skimming in a fast way? So Shiromi, I think you're um, talking about reading part A, where you actually use scanning and skimming quite. You use scanning and skimming. So I'm going to put your question down, and I'm going to put up some tips for reading part A that I'd like to share. If I can get those up, that will help you with scanning and skimming. Um, so uh, s- with the questions themselves, it's important to go through the questions in order. So that's your sort of skimming the four texts very quickly in the first matching set of questions. Um, what I would suggest is to look at, as soon as you get, your time starts, you can have a look at the headings of the texts, of course, the topic of the texts, and then the headings of the texts. Have a look at them to understand what kinds of texts they are. And without um, wasting more time, perhaps go straight into the matching questions if you can, because the matching questions are actually designed to help you skim very quickly. Um, and as you skim, you can use the textual features, which means that you can use the headings, the subheadings. If you have a table, you use the rows and the column headings to understand what the contents of those texts are. Um, so those are really important. Sometimes what happens is people often read, candidates often read part A, you know, each word, each line going from left to right. But what you actually need to do is move your eyes very quickly around, looking at just the things that I've talked about to help you understand how to, just to get a sort of overall rough idea of what these texts are about. Um, so that is how you would quickly skim and scan using the textual features. And then, of course, while you're doing that, make sure at the end you have maybe a minute left in reading part A to sort of check that your spelling is accurate. You could even check that you've copied your answer correctly. As soon as you finish writing it, just going back to the text and checking it's accurate. Um, and skimming and scanning, yes, it is something that you would do quite quickly. Think about how you do it in real life when you're looking for information really quickly. And so, as you get better at it, you will find yourself taking less time. But in the beginning, especially, don't worry about the time. Don't panic about it. Practice without a time limit, and then slowly bring the time limit down. Say from 25 minutes to 20 to 15 even. Bring it down slowly as you get better at your skimming and scanning. Okay. Um, Okay, I'm going to answer this question from Sarah very quickly. Uh, for listening part A, sorry, do you lose points for singular and plural? So yes, Sarah, you would lose marks if the word in the audio was singular and you wrote plural. Um, if the word in the audio was plural and you wrote singular, and that's because if you think about it, you know when you're taking notes, you do need to be accurate in real life. So if a patient says there's pain in their ear, for example, and you write ears, that could lead to tests being done, for example, on both ears when they're not needed. So it would have serious repercussions. And so it's important, and that's why we emphasize that you do write exactly what you hear in the audio, and that includes singular and plural. Okay, I'm looking for some questions here. Um, I've got a question here from Abu, asking, how about speaking materials for OET for nurses? Um, so we have an excellent course on our store, which is our um, mini course, our um, clinical communication speaking booster course, mini course. So it's really short, but it does give you a great idea of the different skills that you need for your speaking test. And I'm just going to put that in the chat now. It's a free course, so it is on our store, but it is free. Um, so I would encourage you to enroll and complete that. We also have some great materials on our OET Ready page, our speaking page, you have two guides, which are wonderful guides that will that break down the linguistic criteria and the clinical communication criteria with lots of examples. So I would say if you're looking for materials on speaking, head to those sources first. Um, instead of looking for practice tests, maybe that's what you're looking for, I'm not sure, but those courses and those uh, handbooks that I've just talked about are great places to begin and to practice more. Okay, I've got a question here from Lily. Where can we find the pulse test? That's on our store, and I'm just posting a link to it in the chat right now. Okay, I've got a question here from Jani. Do we write articles for listening? Jani, you don't need to include articles in listening. Articles are optional in listening and in reading. In fact, if you look at our sample papers, our official sample tests on our website, and look at the answer keys there, you will see that articles are indicated in brackets. Anything in our official materials where you have in the answer key in for listening A and reading A, where something is in brackets, that means it is optional. So yeah, they are optional. Okay. Um, I've got a question here from Mrs. Everest. Could you tell us a bit more about the paper-based test? Is there a test center in Nigeria? So I'm going to actually put into the chat our book a test page. Now, our book a test page is where you can search for the test center that is closest to you, and you can find out, whether it's a paper-based test, it's a computer-based test, and where this test center is. So I would suggest head there. I can confirm that I've just had a look and searched. Yes, there is a test center in Nigeria, but use the link there to just learn a little bit more about the availability there. All right. Okay, I'm going to scroll down for some more recent questions. And do keep your questions coming in. We love reading your questions and answering them. Okay, I've got a question here from Susma on Facebook. Where can I find original reading material? So, Susma, as I shared earlier, we have our Ready page that has a lot of material for reading. And actually, um, what I can recommend is our complete guides to reading part A, part B, and part C. Um, you will see, I'm going to post those in the chat. So our complete guides have, of course, important tips and strategies, but at the end of each guide, you will see there are links and suggestions for how you can read more beyond the practice test kind of materials, and that kind of reading, as I mentioned earlier, is really important to do so that you're actually improving your skills of reading and not just going through practice tests and improving just your test taking skills. doing lots of practice tests is improving your test taking skills, but actually reading outside of practice tests is improving your language, your reading skills. Now, other than that, if you are looking for original OET reading material, head to our store. I'm going to post the chat there, in the chat, a link to the store. When you so For example, if you go to our store, you will see there is plenty of material for you there to uh, different books and things that you can browse, and different materials that are of course paid, but original material that you can trust, including our reading skills course that's there on the store. Okay. Okay, Mohammed on Facebook is saying, to be honest, OET nowadays is money oriented. The exam is difficult, and the easiness depends on, it depends on luck. So, Mohammed, I can understand those sentiments that you've shared there, and thank you for sharing those. It's definitely something that we know. That a lot of candidates often feel, and but I can reassure you that it is not based on luck. It is, like I explained a little bit earlier, it's a test that is standardized, and as I said, it's something that OET has had to prove to regulators that we are a fair test, no matter when you do the test, where you do the test, that that the test gives any candidate equal opportunity, or a fair opportunity, to prove and demonstrate their English skills. So I would like to just reassure you of that. Often what happens is that the time that you spend preparing is really important. So um, um, what often happens is that you might not a lot of candidates aren't as well prepared, and by that I mean, there's a lot going on in the lives of healthcare professionals, um, very busy, and there's of course your family commitments, work commitments, so those things can often get in the way. So my advice to anyone who has um, written the test and not got the scores that they want, would be to actually stop and take a few steps back, and really assess where you are in terms of your language skills and your test taking skills. There are two parts to the to test preparation. You've got your test taking skills, so your format, your your knowledge of the format, how well you can handle time, tips and strategies. All of those things. Those are great skills to have, and a lot of preparation time is spent on test taking skills. But often what gets missed is language skills, which is the other part of the puzzle, which is quite important, that you need in order to get the score you want. Now, by language skills, what I mean is your grammar, your vocabulary, your reading, your writing, your speaking skills. Those take time to develop, and sometimes the experience of candidates who've taken the test a few times but failed is that the language skills is where they needed to work a bit more. What I would recommend is to, like I said, take a few steps back, think about it, and then also perhaps approach one of our teachers. We have some excellent teachers that we can recommend, who will really help you understand where it is that the gap is. Is it language skills, or is it test taking skills? And they have the tools, the resources, and they're trained to help you with both. So they can actually identify where you are and help you with both. So I'm going to just put in the chat the link to our study with a teacher page. And what I might actually also do is just share the link, the page itself, so that you sort of get an idea of what you can find on the page and how you can access. So I've just got it up there, study with a teacher. And how I accessed that was just to go to our Ready tab up on top and select study with a teacher. And as you can see, you've got some filters down here. Um, you can filter by country. You can also filter by provision. So if you want a private tutor, you want an online school, or if you prefer to study in a classroom. And then, of course, your profession. I would recommend perhaps filtering by your country, and also being open to online at schools, because there's lots more schools that offer online provision now that you can take advantage of. So I'd say head to our study with a teacher page and have a look using those filters at something that is going to be that you're going to is going to be accessible to you. Okay, so I've got a few more questions coming in, and I am going to pull up a question um, here from Chinu on Facebook. Chinu's asking, in writing, do we have to write surgery in capital letters? So Chinu, um, I think if you're following uh, whether to capitalize a word or not in any part of the test, especially in writing, uh, is really governed by the general rules of punctuation that you have in English. So if your word surgery comes at the beginning of the sentence, yes, you would need to capitalize the first letter of the word surgery. If it comes in the middle of the sentence, you would use it with a small letter. So those are two examples I've given you of just general English punctuation that would apply to that word. There are, of course, more rules, about whether you would capitalize that word or not. But if you get a hold of any good, website, or even a good dictionary, explains at the back, the rules, some basic grammar and punctuation, I would say have a look at that. Don't OET is a test of English language, and so all the rules that apply to language in general, especially punctuation and things like that, would be applicable in OET as well. So you don't need to worry that OET is any different. If you've learned punctuation and or you study punctuation, the same rules would apply to OET. Okay. Um, I've got a question here, a request here from Ramana on YouTube saying, could you share some writing material? That's a great request, because I'm going to talk about something that is one of my favorite resources, and that is our writing guide. So I'm going to just hide that question there and perhaps just share my screen, so you can have a look at that page that I'm just talking about. Just give me a second. Yeah. So I've got up here the writing page, which is our part of our ready page. So of course, when you go down to the page, you have some general information, but this is what I would encourage you to download. This is the writing guide. If you click download, which I might just do right now, you can see you've got the PDF there that's downloaded, and it's got different chapters. Each of the there's a chapter dedicated for each of the writing assessment criteria. uh, and then you have some more resources there at the end. Now, as you go through each chapter, you've got plenty of examples and explanations about the criteria. So it breaks it down, helps you understand, and gives you plenty of examples. So I would suggest download this guide um, to help you really understand what the writing test is about. Um, and as you can see, you've got more about the guide, how it works. But then, of course, like I said, each part, each chapter is dedicated to one criterion. This is purpose, and you've got lots more. You've got lots of information there. Um, so I would recommend, Ramana, that you download that and have a look there. Just going to share the link to the writing page, and it is on the writing page as you scroll down there. Right. I've got a question here from Jesse. Um, in the speaking subtest, do we need to be perfectly fluent to pass? Jessa, and no, you don't need to be perfectly fluent. Um, if you've been listening to me for the last 45 minutes or so, you can see that I'm not perfectly fluent. I have the hesitations, and sometimes I'm just taking pauses to gather my thoughts. um, and it is like that with most speakers. You don't have to be completely fluent um, to pass the speaking subtest. What I would encourage you to do is just to be natural, and to speak normally, naturally, as you would. If you find you've got some issues with fluency, so if you find that you're hesitating a lot, you're taking really long pauses perhaps, then a good idea would be just to practice that aspect a bit more. Get a friend, a colleague, or study with one of the teachers that I was talking about earlier to help you work on this aspect. Um, okay, I've got. I'm just looking for a few more questions. And Hadil is asking, is there a course for grammar? So, Hadil, I can actually recommend a great resource, a free resource that is based on grammar, which is our free mini language lessons. And I'm going to put that in the chat. But like I just did a bit earlier, I'm going to share my screen because this is an excellent resource that I think everyone should check out after this session. So I'm going to share my screen, and I've shared the link to this page in the chat. But this is just to show you the what is there on the page. So you've got here 5 questions on grammar. They're mini language lessons. Once you click start lesson, you it opens up the lesson on your device. You can do this on your phone. You could also do it on your laptop, wherever, any device that you're using. Um, and it's a short lesson that will take about 10 minutes. You can do it on the go. And it's got an explanation, it's got examples, and it's also got an activity for you to do at the end that will really test whether you've kind of grasped the lesson or not. So I would say check this resource out. Um, okay, I have sort of this question, which I've answered a little earlier, but just about, again, reading part A, what type of tuberculosis do we need to write, pulmonary or just pulmonary? So, as I explained a little earlier, if that word is in the question, remember that we're aiming for accuracy in reading. If the word's in the question, you don't need to repeat it in your answer, the word tuberculosis for your example. So just there's a resource that I recommended a little earlier, which is our How to Succeed in Reading Part A. It's a video that's really useful. I'm going to just repost it in the chat. I would encourage you to have a look at that video that will explain a bit more in detail. Okay, I have got a question here from Dr. Easy on YouTube, asking any suggestions regarding listening part C, because all the options are included in this script. So, any pickup strategies? So, that's a good observation there that you've made. That yes, the speaker in the audio would sort of allude to or reference all the options there. And so you really need to be listening carefully to understand what what the right answer is. So I'm going to share a couple of tips for listening part C. And the first one is to use your reading time effectively. Now, it might seem simple. Everyone reads the questions and reads the options before the audio starts, but actually, it's really what you're doing during that time and how are you reading. So, if you are simply just reading, that's not going to be really helpful. What you need to do while you're reading is actually pay attention to the questions in that reading time. It's a limited amount of time, so pay attention to the questions, understand the questions first. And then if you have extra time left over, then you could go over the answer options. And as you read the answer options, think about what's the difference between each of the answer options. What's the area of difference? What's one option focusing on? And when you do that, you have sort of prepared your brain to listen to the difference, and so that will help with discriminating the answer options. The second tip is to keep focus. It's really important to practice listening for straight 40 minutes with utmost concentration, because if you think about it, listening part C is at the end of your listening test, and it's really quite challenging. And so, keeping your focus till the end is something that won't just happen on the day of the test or in your practice tests. You really need to develop the habit of listening for extended periods of time with focus. So that's the second tip, and then the third tip is not to worry so much if you haven't got a question, if not been able to answer a question. Don't worry, move on to the next question. It's important that you do that so that you have a good chance of answering the next questions ahead, and instead of worrying about what has just just passed. Okay, so we're in the last 5 minutes of this session, and I'm just going to be looking for um, some some different questions. A few questions that I can see similar to the ones that I've answered earlier. So if your question is about articles and um, spellings in listening part A, I would recommend just going back to the recording a little earlier and having a listen. I am going to um, just look for maybe one final question that I can answer. Um, okay, so I'm going to pick up this question here. Um, some tips for the writing subtest. Um, I think the most important tip that I can give you for the writing subtest is to actually keep your reader as the most important person in your mind as you imagine, as you read your case notes and as you plan your letter. Now, what do I mean by this? The assessors that are marking your writing, your letter, um, of course they're looking for grammar, of course they're looking for vocabulary and all of that, but what they're also looking for is how well your letter communicates what the reader needs to know to to the person to the person reading your letter. So if you think about it, these set of case notes are they're sort of like a unique set of case notes to a patient you might have in real life, for example. And whether you're transferring care, discharging the patient, or referring the patient, the person reading your letter is going to want to know the most important information that is relevant to them. They don't want to know everything about the patient. All of that information is there that they can access in a file, for example, or something. But from your letter, they need to get a gist of, or a very good sort of idea of what do they need to do um, to continue care for this patient. So, the biggest tip there that I can share is that you actually put yourself in the shoes of the reader. Think about the reader. What is their role? Have they met the patient before? Is this a patient that's known to them, familiar to them? Um, what aspects of care are they going to be looking into? What are the things that they need to do? So if you think about your case notes from that perspective and put yourself in the shoes of the reader, then you're actually on a very good path, or you're actually on your way to writing a really good letter. So I'm going to post into the chat a really great article, blog article about the reader strategy. Now, the reader strategy, I won't go into all of it here. It's in the blog, but it really describes a bit more in detail and gives you questions that you can ask yourself as you read your case notes, as you write your letter, and even after you've written your letter. That helps you understand what you should focus on. All right, so we've come to the end of our session today. Thank you for all of your questions. If you haven't had your question answered today, um, don't worry, we're still here for you. You can head over to our Facebook page and type your question in the messenger. we will get back to you within 24 hours of you posting your question. um, if your question is burning. If it's not and you would like it to be answered live, then sorry, that was the wrong one I've posted in. Apologies. I'm just going to bring up the right information. So we've got our next Q&A session, which is going to be hosted by my colleague Rebecca, and it's on the 19th of September at 4 p.m. Australia time. That's 2 p.m. in the Philippines, a little earlier in the day, 7 a.m. in the UK and in Nigeria, and 11:30 a.m. in India. So you can join Rebecca for that session, or like I said, post your answer questions in Facebook. Until next time, thanks. Bye bye.